What is up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Weekend Roundup here on Touchline Talk. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the content I put out on YouTube every single week. Some Premier League action to get to here, and then, of course, the big showdown in LA between Inter Miami and LAFC. Starting in England, though, biggest game of the weekend, Arsenal 3, Manchester United 1. It is United who go ahead. Really good counter-attacking goal from Marcus Rashford, exactly what you expect from Manchester United. Finally get an attacking goal that's not a penalty, or a goal from an attacking player that is not a penalty. Against the run of play, Martin Odegaard immediately equalizes. And then you get into the VAR situations of this game. Kai Havertz, who really had a tough go of it again. I have given up hope on this working. I really thought playing him deeper might make a difference. It's not. But he has his one good moment. He appears to have drawn a penalty. VAR overturns it. And to me, this is a perfect illustration of how the one way you can use VAR and get some consistency with it, where everybody can be on the same page. That is simply not a clear and obvious error. Either way, whatever was the call on the field is what should have stood. I didn't think that Havertz was flailing his leg out to jump into a defender or something. I also don't think it was a clear-cut penalty where you had to give it. It was a relatively soft penalty, but it's not like there was a egregious mistake that was made by awarding it. The only way to get consistency is to stop re-refereeing everything and to let calls that are questionable stand, because then everybody knows where the bar is, and the bar is high. Obviously, that's not what happened. Arsenal don't get their penalty. Then you have Garnacho's goal. He looks like he won it for Manchester United. He's centimeters, inches offside. Now that's a little bit different because you can actually get that down to the millimeter. Whether you should or not is a different conversation, but he's just offside. Arsenal catch a massive break, and then Declan Rice delivers. Really cool moment for him. Gabriel Jesus adds the third, and all of a sudden the game looked like they were going to lose. They win by 2. This was a huge win for Arsenal. I've been harping on this to just keep pace with Manchester City. Make sure you don't fall out of the title race the first few weeks of the season. You can't afford to drop more points at home. They managed to get the win. This Havertz thing is just not working. I'm going to be really curious to see how long Mikel Arteta gives him, whether they can get some confidence instilled in him, because that chance he missed it in the first half, any player that has any kind of confidence is at least putting that on target and probably putting it in the back of the net. And he just kind of whiffs on it completely. On the United side of this, especially with the injuries at the back right now, they simply have to be able to get more out of their attack. And if you want to build that around counterattacks, that's fine. You got to generate more than they did in this game, because they only generated a couple opportunities. They scored on one. Garnacho finished really well and was just a little bit offside on the other one. But one goal, a couple opportunities is not going to be enough on the road against Arsenal when by the end of the game, Harry Maguire and Johnny Evans are playing at center back. And you got 2 right backs out there because all your left backs are injured. It's the same tune I was talking about last week, where the same issues are there, and maybe Rasmus Højlund is the solution, but you haven't seen any kind of progress with United so far. The other game I want to mention briefly, Brighton beat Newcastle fairly handily. Evan Ferguson, fantastic performance. What I want to say here is just quickly about Newcastle. This team is not dynamic offensively compared to the other teams that they are competing with. The Arsenals, the Manchester Cities, the Liverpools. They got to where they were last season because they were every bit as good as Manchester City defensively. You cannot be leaking goals the way they are right now and expect to finish top 4 unless you all of a sudden start scoring, and they're not. They're scoring their 1 goal and they're giving up 2. And again, this is a brutal part of their schedule that needs to be acknowledged. But if you're not going to be elite defensively, that's the difference between being able to finish third and fourth and being sixth, seventh in this league. With what Spurs are doing, with what Liverpool is doing, they're going to be in the top four race this season. Obviously, you've got United in that mix. Brighton are going to be a factor in there. You just have too many teams to not improve offensively and to be significantly worse defensively. Maybe it's just a bad combination of poor form, difficult schedule, and this all turns around, but not a good day for Newcastle. And then, as I mentioned, Inter Miami, LAFC. Everybody was out to watch this game in LA, it felt like. And it is Inter Miami that come away with the win. A very big win to keep putting points on the board, to keep closing the gap toward that playoff line. And this is going to come down to what they do when Messi isn't on the field. When Messi is away on international duty, when Messi is not starting, because he's not going to start every game. At least it doesn't appear that way. That is what's going to decide this. Because with him on the field, they are absolutely good enough to get the amount of points they need, especially with the way this has started, to at least keep themselves in the mix until the last game of the season and stay just within striking distance and give themselves a real shot to make the playoffs. I firmly believe that. But if they drop 5 points in games that Messi doesn't start, or 5 to 7 points in games Messi doesn't start or play in, that can make the difference right there. So to me, that's what it's going to come down to. The other thing I want to say, coming off of this game, and now having seen this Inter Miami team play in Philadelphia and LAFC, which are, maybe Cincinnati has overtaken them at this particular moment in time, but over the past couple seasons, the two most difficult places to play in this league. And they blew them both away on the scoreboard. But if you actually watch those games, those score lines are so deceiving. Now, they kind of buried the Union in the first half. But even in that second half, if you don't get that big save, the Union probably have at least 2 goals. And it gets real interesting and stressful in those final minutes. And then obviously Inter Miami got a 4th to really put the game away. But the Union had all kinds of chances in that second half and absolutely dominated. That was about as uncomfortable a 4-1 win as you can have. And then you go to this game. LAFC probably should have had 2 goals before Inter Miami scored. And it was a combination of bad finishing and bad decision making. In that final third, that 3-on-2, I believe it was, where Bouanga didn't get the ball to Carlos Vela. Both of them that had another good chance in there in the first half. They just didn't take them. And I'm using these 2 games because these are the 2 that Inter Miami have been really impressive on the road. Other than that, it's been a bunch of draws. But these 2 games to illustrate a very specific point, which is this Inter Miami team is not outplaying opponents. Sometimes. But the best teams in this league, they are not outplaying. They are out executing. That is going to be the story here. That is going to be the story moving forward until they get a team where they are clearly just better than everybody. Because I will continue to say that is not the case. They are one of the best teams in the league. But they're not head and shoulders above everybody else. What they make you do, though, is to be really good in every single important moment. You make one defensive mistake, Messi's going to punish you. Calendar comes up with a couple saves. You make a couple bad decisions in the final third. Inter Miami get one opportunity, and all of a sudden it's 1-0 when it probably should be 2-0 the other way. I still don't exactly know what to make of this. Because there's part of me going, this is not a sustainable way to continue to win at the highest level. This is not a sustainable formula. And the other part of me is saying, Messi doing this is incredibly sustainable. And if it wasn't sustainable, why are they still able to do it? Why did they just go into LAFC and make them look as unprepared and as not up to the task as the Union did. Nobody makes those two teams look the way Miami did. But it's not because they're outplaying them for 90 minutes and dominating the game. They're just taking their chances and making you beat them, and nobody has so far. So I'm still trying to figure out exactly what that means and how I feel about it. But to me, that is the ultimate takeaway from Miami. They are beatable, but you got to be near perfect. And so far, nobody has been able to do it. It was a big win to just keep themselves in that playoff conversation. It's going to come down to what they do without Messi. I really believe that. So with this international break, we're going to see what that starts looking like. And LAFC came in terrific form as well. It's worth pointing that out. It wasn't like they were coming off the back of a really bad string of performances here. Those two things just don't make sense in my head. That you don't watch them and you go, my goodness, they are just better than everybody else. And also you look up and they beat the best two teams on the league on the road convincingly because they just take their opportunities and they overwhelm you mentally. And LAFC are the latest team that we're not able to cope with that. And I'm also fascinated to see if we get a second matchup of this game or the Union game. What have these teams learned if they get that second opportunity against Miami in the playoffs? That is all for the weekend roundup, though. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time.